The French tutoring scene between Janice and Eva unfolds as a layered and emotionally charged exchange, where the surface-level comedy of a distracted student masking her lack of preparation with charm gives way to something more complex, more revealing, and more human. What appears at first to be a classic student-teacher tension setup instead becomes a quiet meditation on boundaries, longing, and the vulnerability that arises when a woman's guarded composure is met with another woman's unfiltered admiration. Janice, ostensibly there to learn the French verb aller, to go, seems instead to be learning the language of self-expression, of daring to say the unsayable. Her inability to focus on conjugations is less about disinterest in language and more about her struggle to stay within the safe, sanctioned boundaries of polite interaction. She breaks that boundary gently, impulsively, when she tells Eva she is beautiful, and though the line could read as insolence, it instead lands as a small act of honesty in a world that often punishes women for speaking their truth. Eva, for her part, responds with firmness but not cruelty. She clings to professionalism, to the structure of her teaching role, because that structure protects her from the rawness of what's being exposed between them. Yet the tremor beneath her corrections, the pauses, the soft laughter, the defensiveness when she insists French is in the book, not on my shirt, betrays her own unsettled feelings. This is not the power play it could be misread as. It is a mutual grappling with intimacy in a space that was never meant to hold it. The tension between discipline and vulnerability mirrors the queer experience of learning to navigate attraction within boundaries that society often polices more harshly for women. The act of language learning becomes symbolic. Eva demands mastery of conjugation, precision, clarity, while Janice, through her clumsy affection, speaks in a different kind of fluency, one rooted in emotional intuition rather than grammatical correctness. The miscommunication between them thus reflects a larger cultural pattern. The world's insistence that queer women articulate their feelings in acceptable, codified ways, rather than in the messy, spontaneous language of desire. For lesbian and queer audiences, Janice's persistence may feel painfully familiar, the way she tries to express affection but is met with measured restraint, how she teeters between courage and embarrassment. There is humor in her boldness, but it's a nervous humor, the laughter of someone testing whether the truth will be received with compassion or rejection. Eva's exasperation masks her own internal conflict, as though she senses that acknowledging Janice's feelings, or her own response to them, could unravel her carefully ordered life. Her correction of verbs je vais, tu vas, becomes an ironic echo of what Janice is really trying to learn: how to go, how to move toward what she wants, how to cross from admiration into honesty. The very word, aller, to go, takes on a double meaning, transforming from a linguistic exercise into a question of emotional movement. Will either of them go there, toward acknowledgement, or will they retreat back into the safety of denial? This subtext speaks deeply to queer viewers who recognize how coded, hesitant, and incremental the expression of same-gender attraction can be, especially in spaces framed by hierarchy or professionalism. There is a dance of power here, but it's not erotic domination. It's the tension between the teacher's authority and the student's yearning for recognition, the power of being seen versus the risk of being too visible. The scene refuses to grant easy resolution. It lingers in discomfort, in the ambiguity of glances, in the overlapping of grammar and emotion. For women watching, queer or otherwise, this moment can resonate as an exploration of what it means to want something that feels both natural and forbidden. Not because it's morally wrong, but because the world insists on labeling it inappropriate. Eva's insistence on structure, her correction of every word, embodies the external expectations women often internalize: to stay composed, to manage desire, to remain appropriate. Janice's rebellion is small but radical. She insists on naming beauty, on noticing, on seeing another woman and saying it out loud. Her impulsive honesty is both risky and liberating. In many ways, she embodies the emotional curiosity that queer women are so often shamed for: the desire to connect, to express warmth, to explore feelings that fall outside heteronormative scripts. The discomfort this creates, for Eva, for viewers conditioned by societal norms, reveals how deeply entrenched those scripts still are. We are taught to see intimacy between women as spectacle, as fantasy, or as deviance, but rarely as genuine human connection. And this scene refuses that framing. It stays awkward, tender, and real. Eva's resistance isn't disgust, it's fear. Fear of implication, of losing control, of what happens when emotional authenticity disrupts social decorum. Yet her small cracks of kindness, her patient tone, her smile when Janice says she's happy to speak French, betray a softness that hints at empathy, maybe even recognition. The French lesson thus becomes a metaphor for queer awakening, the painstaking process of learning to name feelings that have no safe translation. For many queer women, especially those raised in environments where desire for another woman must remain unspoken, this scene captures the quiet rebellion of speaking a new emotional language, even when your teacher insists you stay within the textbook. Janice's playful defiance, Her interruptions, her laughter, her blushing flirtation is not manipulation but a way of reclaiming agency. She refuses to be only a pupil, refuses to perform submission to an authority that denies her emotional truth. In doing so, she embodies the broader queer struggle to assert authenticity in spaces that demand conformity. Eva's role, meanwhile, reflects the queer woman who has learned to hide behind roles and responsibilities, whose desire for order becomes a shield against the chaos of feeling. When Janice tells her she's beautiful, Eva's instinct is to redirect to the lesson, but that redirection reads less as rejection and more as self-preservation. Her reaction speaks to countless women who, faced with unexpected vulnerability, retreat into professionalism or sarcasm because they have never been shown how to safely receive admiration. The beauty of the scene lies in this tension, the way two women from different emotional worlds find themselves suspended in a moment of mutual recognition. Neither one fully steps into desire, but both glimpse the possibility of connection. For LGBTQ+ audiences, this unfinished moment feels achingly familiar. The near touch, the almost confession, the safety that flickers just before self-censorship returns. It's a reminder of how queerness often exists in the interstices of language, in pauses and glances and nervous laughter. The discomfort of watching it, the teacher's controlled exasperation, the student's clumsy persistence, mirrors society's ongoing unease with women's intimacy when it isn't sanitized, sexualized, or made comic relief. The scene resists all three. It neither mocks nor fetishizes. Instead, it holds space for the awkwardness of honesty between women, suggesting that truth often arrives in imperfect, halting fragments. When Eva finally concedes a smile, when Janice admits she's happy to be learning, the atmosphere softens. The lesson becomes less about verbs and more about mutual acknowledgement. This transformation is what makes the moment so resonant for queer women, the recognition that beneath the surface of every guarded exchange lies the potential for tenderness, for a shared understanding that transcends roles. The discomfort that still surrounds such portrayals, society's insistence on reading them as inappropriate or predatory, reveals not the danger of women's intimacy, but the fear it provokes in a culture that depends on women's emotional containment. By the time Janice jokes that they could waste time in a better way, what lingers is not provocation but the ache of unspoken yearning, a moment suspended between possibility and propriety. Eva's gentle but firm you, at the end, encapsulates that tension perfectly. It's both an invitation and a warning, a question that remains unanswered because it must. The scene closes not with resolution but with resonance, inviting viewers to sit in that gray space where desire, admiration, and respect coexist. For women and queer audiences, that gray space is the most honest territory of all. It is where authenticity begins, not in the scripted performance of confidence or control, but in the fragile, transformative act of daring to see and be seen. Through its awkward humor and hesitant tenderness, this scene becomes not a flirtation, but a quiet declaration of existence, of queer longing that refuses invisibility, of women finding language for connection even when the world tells them to stay silent.